ADC, they are living in a foolhardy, honestly, by calling themselves major opposition in Nigeria. They are not major oppositions. They are not. Because they have been tested several times and they have not proven to anybody that they're really a major opposition. They are only a major opposition on social media. Firstly, there was a by-election in Rivers State, which they participated. They failed woefully, without no result. So also, they participated in Kano by-election. They participated fully. They failed woefully, without nothing to show for it. Of recent, they participated in the FCT election. All the area councils, they participated. They failed woefully, nothing to show for it. Not even one of the councillors out of the 62 councillors in FCT, they could not even get one. One they could not get. Despite having a sitting senator that just recently decamped to their party. They could not even get only one councillor. Councillor they could not get. And they are tagging themselves major opposition. Major opposition. They are not major oppositions. If you want to talk of major opposition, I can tell you for free that PDP is still a major opposition in Nigeria. More than ADC. ABGA is still a major opposition in Nigeria, more than ADC. Labour Party is still a major opposition in Nigeria, more than ADC. SDP is still a major opposition in Nigeria, more than ADC. So coming together and carrying your hands together, you think you are, because of your past records, you think that makes you an opposition? No, it's the result. The result. And you have been tested on various occasions, elections. You cannot produce only one victory, just only one. If you cannot even win a councillor, that shows that you are nothing, just an empty shell. And to all those of you shouting, tagging yourself activists, you are not activists. I'm fine to Mama P. She's not an activist. Aisha Yusuf, she's not an activist. Randy Peter Akan, that guy that is shouting like, looking like Agege, he's not an activist. They are not an activist. I call them political activists because they have an interest already. In case you don't know Nigerians, the three of them, they are on the payroll of Peter Obi. So they are members of Peter Obi's group. When Peter Obi was in Labour, they were in Labour with him. When Peter Obi now shifted to ADC, they followed him. Their own job is to come and shout on social media. That's all. No strategy, nothing. And if you think they can bamboozle the chairman of INEC, who is a professor of law and also a senior advocate for that matter, he knows what he's doing. And I just listened to his clip. He has just lectured the David Mark faction. He told them to go and check what is status quo anti-balloon. He lectured them. So they just come to the show to come and shout and shout and shout and shout and cry and cry. And listen to that noise maker around the Peter and say, yeah, they're going to shut down INEC. They're going to do this, that. They're going to shut down the streets. They're going to protest. Is that how you're going to win election? Prepare yourself for election. And the way things are going, it seems that ADC may not even participate in this election because they have shot themselves in the foot. They have. The way things are going, they may not participate in this election. And there's nothing they can do about it if they are not satisfying the constitution and the law. Everything has a procedure. You are shouting, we are the major opposition. What makes you major opposition? You cannot even win one councillor. You cannot win one seat in Rivers. You cannot win one seat in Kano. You cannot win one seat in FCT. You are calling yourself major opposition. You are not a major opposition, ADC. You are only a major crier in the social media. That's all what you are, ADC. Nothing. Just crying, shouting everywhere on internet, on social media, and all the platform without strategy. Strategy wins an election, not noise making. That is what APC has as an edge above you guys. We are calling for the sack of INEC chairman, sack of all the commissioners of INEC. If they sack all of them, then who will control the election? It shows that you people are not serious. You people are not serious at all. And you cannot play this game with Tinubu. Tinubu is a master strategist. I'm telling you, I've been saying it. And for those that are following me all this while, I made a statement more than 2 years ago. Just in 4 months of Tinubu's administration, I granted an interview with the media house in Abuja. And I told the whole world, I said in the next 2 years, Nigeria will be operating like one party system because Tinubu knows the game. Tinubu knows the game. As I speak with you, some governors are begging to join APC. So for those of you say, oh, Tinubu wants to turn Nigeria into one party state, it's not his fault. It's his strategies and administration and the development, the achievement. That is what is enticing all those people. So he believes in working and with results to attract people. And that's why you see a lot of people jumping into that ship of APC. As I speak, 2 governors are begging today. They want to join APC. So you think Tinubu is going to go and call this people and join APC? Don't join at the camp? No. They have seen the whole thing on the wall. They have seen the right thing on the wall and they want to be relevant politically. So they need APC platform. That is who Tinubu is. He's a master strategist. And I can tell you, I'm saying it again, he's the only president that is prepared for that seat. decades ago. So he has his template of what he wants, and it's working for him. So if you like, go and shout in social media, go and do whatever. Do you see Tinubu's talk? No. Strategy. Follow the law. So as it is now, if you are in ADC, start looking for another party, because you may not participate in the election if you are still flying ADC as a party. I can tell you the way things are going.
All right, there is a case in court now, the Federal High Court, filed by Matthew Bala Gombe, who says he never resigned. It was said that he resigned in 2025, but he's saying now that he never resigned and wants to be the automatic chairman of the party. If he is right or he is wrong, what does he say about the incumbent, how they came to power?
Okay, so there are two ways to look at it. First, look at it as how did it is a process. There was a merger or there was a takeover. We can all debate whether the process was smooth or not. Okay, whether it was maybe something ought to have been done. That's possible. But the two questions are clear. One is, did he resign? Okay, let's assume he didn't resign as he claimed, because later are now on the open that show that except there's allegation of forgery, which would be a criminal case. But if there's no allegation of forgery, there's a clear letter where he resigned. And if that's the case, then he has no case. But as well, he didn't resign. So the question is, what about it? So he's the vice chairman. He claims to be the chairman. That he didn't resign his vice position. His claim is that he was the chairman. Okay, let's assume he's the chairman. Let's assume he's the chairman. So it's not a case of determining between him and David Mark who's the chairman. It doesn't destroy the credibility of the NWC itself, which is a product of a NEC that INEC supervises, which nobody has challenged the credibility or the validity of that NEC. So the question is, people claim to have resigned. Somebody claimed I didn't follow them, which means the voluntary resignation is not, don't affect me. But the party decision-making process is NEC and convention. And NEC now says, when I resign or not, NEC says all the members are dissolved. So let's assume they resign. They say you guys are dissolved. It's okay. You don't have to go back and say that NEC decision is faulty, because the NEC decision dissolving the party is an illegal, legal position, authoritative, because the constitution of party says the highest organized convention followed by NEC. So if you now says I don't resign, okay, you are still vice chairman. Okay, even if you are the chairman, it does not negate. So what ultimately, there's nothing in the decision of the Court of Appeal, from what I know as a lawyer, that warrants that INEC would take the action they took yesterday. And even if see, the point is not about who ultimately becomes the chairman, is you have rendered this party, leaderless, created a shadow of doubt around this activity. And this happens at the time that a major shift happens in front of the party. Proconsul, who is a very powerful political actor, joined a couple of days ago. Today was scheduled for the governor of Bauchi to join. And then the night before, you hit this bazooka to just create confusion. So the timing, INEC, this has been over 3-4 weeks. You are part of this process. This has been served on you. Why today? Why now? This matter because there's an aspect of public perception. And that's why I say the history of the past, where you were used by the ruling party, and always be used by ruling parties, whether PDP or APC, to undermine election, suggests that you now act with greater sensitivity and caution. So even if INEC feels that they needed to vacate that recognition, they probably wait a few days. They probably take. So the fact that you acted now, acted the manner you acted, and no order directs INEC to take any action in this matter. No. Unlike the one of Labour Party, where INEC was directed and they didn't even remove the name. So you would say that, like judges say, that justice ought to be done and sin to be done. So in this case, what's the public perception of your action? So let's assume that this Joe Ashamu is a very holy man. He has no phone call with Tinubu or with the chairman of the party, APC. This is all timing, perception. Are you not supposed to be a lot more thorough, sensitive, kind of deliberative and kind of cautious to say, look, what's the overall impact of these actions on the party? And again, I've been arguing that INEC as a regulator, forget lawyers writing letters, you need to talk to the parties and provide more information. So look, what we're doing, this is how we want to do it, this is what we expect to happen, this is how this will affect. The parties' members have scheduled to have convention. What are you doing? You should be the one who go to the court to say, we need certainty. Courts, we need to make sure these guys are on the ballot. That's the job of INEC.
All right. Someone argued that what INEC did in removing David Mark and Aregbesola from their portal, and if you like the NWC, is a judicial overreach, given the position of the Court of Appeal that they should maintain the status quo. What do you think?
Well, the purpose of status quo antebellum would be status quo before, even because the NEC, I told you, was July 29. These issues arose September. So status quo would be keep this as they are, which is that the ESCO has resigned. Now, status quo, also the decision came after INEC had already recognized them. So that would be, don't do any further thing. In fact, the status quo will favor David Mark, because they are the people already in by the time the matter status quo was, when the court said, and what the court didn't give it. This is like, court just say, you guys, why, shit your sword. Why we don't do something nasty that will change the configuration of this case. So everybody stay back. The court did not ask INEC to take an action, positive action to remove somebody who already was on the status quo. So they are right that INEC acted. INEC had no duty, no directives from the court to remove anybody. INEC did it. It would appear from presumption now, not evidence, that INEC was acting the script, and it's okay. A asks for, Mr. X asks for A, Y asks for B. Okay, I will not give Y, I will give B. I'll clear enough here. That was the logic of, it looks like contrived. Somebody cooked it up. These guys played to their hand, asked for this guy to be restrained. INEC, okay, this one say, INEC, remove everybody. INEC, it's just like the example we had with Solomon and the baby that died, and the woman who didn't have real claims says, you know what, cut this baby. I said, let me cut it. So that's what INEC has done. So, okay, since people say we should allow Rafiu as people, and other people said we should remove you guys. Okay, no, not that Rafiu, we have removed you guys. No, I think it sounds like a script hatched by opposition, by ruling party, to stop the momentum that, for now, is on the side of the opposition party.
What do you make of INEC saying that let the judicial process continues while they delete, whereas we've seen in time past when such processes are also ongoing in the courts, but the NWC or those involved are also allowed without INEC deleting them from their portal? Why is this one the special case?
Because INEC wants to delete this for strategic purpose of the ruling party. That's that's the only that makes sense to me. I mean, like you said, why should they bother? Okay, you guys are to be in court or to get a positive order. Tell us what to do. In the meantime, status quo remain. And then we go and monitor the elections that they're doing. So if the court now finally says it's wrong, we'll vacate it. So INEC loses nothing. That's the point. There's nothing that requires INEC to act. Let's assume at the end of the day that Rafiu or Nafiu wins the election, wins the case, and the court says that the Mark leadership was fake or illegal, or irregularly constituted. Therefore, their actions in staging convention is invalid. What does INEC lose? Do you get the point? Whatever. So it's gratuitous. Like I said in my interview elsewhere, I said it's at best it's a gratuitous. At worst, it's a malicious intervention.
At what point does INEC's neutrality becomes complicit? The way they are going now, this case can drag on knowing our courts, and especially making reference to what former President Jonathan said, it is easy to wake a man who is sleeping as against the man who is pretending to be sleeping. So if INEC in this instance is working towards an answer, at what point does their neutrality become complicit? Because
my own view is that's the grand plan of APC. APC campaign strategy is first to avoid competition. I mean, I'm not sure they are governing well. I think they are failing on that indicator. I'm not too sure that President Tinubu is strong enough to campaign rigorously, especially against maybe a youthful, energetic guy like P2B, assuming he becomes there. I mean, the last time P2B dragged him, like silly across the country, he couldn't even show up for some of the television shows. I would presume that it'd be worse. It's not ready to really go down, ground zero and start explaining the failure of the government. So their big strategy is to make sure there is no big competition. And that's why effort was made to get the governors in. And the idea was that it will create a sense of fait accompli. It weakens everybody say, oh, why bother? The ruling party has 36 governors. So what are they fighting for? It has not worked. The momentum is still with the opposition. People are angry. If you look at registration, if you look at social media, if you look at opposition is growing, not because they are organized, not because they have, what it takes. People basically feel the country is going the wrong way. If you ask people, if you do a lot of polling and say, do you think the country is going the right or wrong way? My guess would be like 80% of Nigerians, 80 would say the country is going the wrong way. If you ask them that, do you think that your life is better or worse? They will say 80 to 90 will say worse off. If you ask people, do you feel more secured in this country now than before? 90 people say we feel insecure. If you ask them, do you think that the ruling government is doing well or bad? 80 to 90 will say they are not doing well. So all these indicators show what it's constant everywhere in the world. The problem is without that chance to express how they feel. The idea of voting is voter preference, but then sometimes that preference is bottled because of the structure of elections themselves. So the APC playbook starts with chapter 1, which is don't allow real competition. It comes many ways. destabilize the parties so that they don't in fact, at a point, from legal rules, from the Electoral Act itself, it's called that many candidates will be caught off guard. Their candidates will be illegal. Think about all the rules now that they are bringing in tomorrow. Don't be surprised the National Assembly will pass an amendment. We saw the one proposed to say you can't join two parties. What does that mean? To put those parties. So everything is being done to satisfy chapter 1, which is don't allow competition. It might mean the resident ADC, which could be the next point. So if we can't remove the leadership, cut off the party. So people are stranded. Last minute, Okwanzo, P2B, Atiku Abubakar. We just discover that they're just stranded. The team will compete with one Musa and one Onyema in ZLP, in PDP, in Fait accompli. The chapter 2 of the rule book then is if there's still a competition, maybe a P2B emerges somewhere miraculously along the line, or Atiku Abubakar still emerges, what do? Then rig the election. And so that's why they worked very hard. They were very resistant to the press to create that safeguard of real-time, so that there's a possibility that fake results will be received. And like I said, I don't see the INEC chairman. I'm not going to put my defense line on the INEC and INEC chairman. No, they will fail. The profile does not tell me that. So that's why our work is to protect INEC, to press INEC, to make sure INEC doesn't get caught up in this chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the APC game plan. So is there a point where so-called neutrality becomes dangerous? Yes. I mean, when INEC dribbles or get dribbled into where it's now clear that maybe no candidate is emerging because either by rules, either by order from courts, and by the way, everything INEC is doing wrong, or anything INEC will do, or anything happen to election negatively, at the heart of it is the court that, in my view, seem to the other Nigeria as captured. The court will give INEC the slam. They give in basketball. They will give them the ball, to set it up properly for them to slam. INEC will now slam it. They will give an order that INEC will now purportedly to implement. They will do. So you're going to see that dual striker force of INEC at the court that will damage the election and help the APC rule book to come to pass. My concern is, look, the best thing we can have in Nigeria is a free and fair election that sustains or at least prevent the scepter of coups that have been happening in West Africa. We just sit with some sense of presumption that, maybe because we have oil money we can share, that we're not going to be overrun by chaos or collapse or violent conflict or even military coup that succeeds. I don't have that faith. I think the system is so fragile. I think we're almost like overrun by militia. We are struggling with terrorists. We are struggling with insurgents locally, people who are angry with the country, like Nigerians, whether in the southwest, whether in the southeast, whether in the north. We are struggling with poor economic performance. We are struggling with an elite that is criminal in their greed. So if you put all this together with a very terrible election, I'm not sure we'll survive. So my prayer is that somehow INEC will wake up from sleep, or wake up from pretense of being asleep, and really pull itself to say, look, the first guarantor of fair and fair election in West Africa is that the electoral of the INEC will be against the ruling party. If INEC is in bed with the ruling party, which is a phenomenon that's common, we will never have fair and fair election.
What do you make of having an Atiku and Obi, Kwakwanso, and Mechi on the same platform, and all of them almost being frozen out by the actions and inactions of INEC? Are we likely to watch an opposition that will just wake up and discover that they've been surgically dismantled by a compromised institution?
And that will happen, may likely happen. And again, see, it's supposed to be a great thing to have these great leaders in one opposition party. We always wanted to have, like in Senegal, if you have a ruling party strong, then you have an opposition party that brings together everybody to fight and they win. And that's good for democracy. So when we talk about opposition, it's not like we love the people in opposition. It's that a strong opposition is good for democracy. That creates that competitive feeling, which is at the heart of democratic theory. The Nigerian politics now, since 2023, has become a joke. It's difficult to know. I mean, laughable. P2B was a Labour Party did well. According to him, they fought him, destroyed the party. We don't want you. People were laughing at P2B. I said, he couldn't manage a party. He couldn't manage his Labour Party. Now, what do you say to David Mark and Atiku and others who are now in ADC? Do you know what I'm making? So it wasn't about P2B. There was a submarine, a strike force that's going about striking down wherever you see, whatever that strike force is. So Labour gone down. PDP was thinking around maybe bringing back Jonathan or bringing back P2P. PDP gone down. ADC now looks like it's going down, or they're hitting them down again. So the notion that these parties are failing because their leaders are poor managers is wrong. There are several instances. How can suddenly all the parties begin to fail? We didn't have those failures in previous elections from 1999. APP did not fail. There was no interminable leadership crisis, even though PDP was in power. PDP was in power, APC, of course, you see people drift towards the ruling party because of payouts. But the party had stability. They were not fighting, endless fight. Somebody doesn't come up and say, I'm the chairman, and I'm this and that. 100 cases, and then injunction, uncertainty. When we now saw ACN came into 2014, APC rather, to challenge PDP, Jonathan did not send people to challenge the leadership. Nobody came and said they were the chairman. The party grew, the party worked hard, and was able to defeat PDP. But today, in 2023, from 2023 to today, what we now see is that all the managers of parties are now incompetent. So is it the happenstance, coincidence, that from Tinubu's era, party leadership management in Nigeria became incompetence writ large? So no party is able to organize itself. For the first time, we're now seeing claimants of chairmanship. We've now seen neck of parties dissolved. We're now seeing PDP has their own neck, PDP has two neck, different BOT. These things have to be explained. They cannot be the result of a sudden wave of incompetent party management. The people who are running this party were people who are running the parties before. The two of us, that's the same guys. That's the same people. I don't know, all these guys are potential David Mark, who were Senate president 2 times. So when did Amechi, who is now in the ADC, was a campaign lead for APC when they won the election twice? Is that not correct? So how did they just become incompetent? That all the parties have to fail. All the parties now have strong, visible claimants to alternative authority. All of them have a different BOT. People are claiming, people come for the woodwork, and then now BOT, and then get to work court. And interestingly, the judges who give the decisions are like countable. If it's a motor shop, it's Abdul Malik, it's over 3 or 4 people that give the judgments all the time.
All right, let's look at David Mark. If you look at his national stature, like you rightly pointed out, a former 2-time Senate president, look at his military background, the way INEC deleted his name like a jigger on the leg. Does it worry you, the kind of election we are heading towards 2027?
What I see from a social science analytics, not an interest, is chaos, rigging, incredibility. Because I think 2 things happen. 1 is time for doing everything short. 2 is the highest level of desperation and manipulative leadership and very big disdain for rules or orderliness in politics. I mean, when the president is called Jagaban, maybe that's the price we pay. It means it's a generalissimo in the art of taking hostages in politics. The first hostage is INEC now. The court, I think, is a hostage. So it worries me. It's not even about David Mark, who is a well-established guy, but also about the possibility that we might get to where, all the incidents or features of democratic elections are over. And then, we get an outcome that further complicates our problem. I'm always concerned about development. Election is a means to an end. Yes, election is an end. People exercise their rights, whether good or bad, but it's also a means to an end. It's a means of political change, of stability, of development. And so my worry is that we are getting a politics that undermines and underserves all these critical values.
Can you take us through all that transpired, or some of the things that transpired that led you into saying that the INEC chairman, all he said, does not inspire hope and confidence?
It happened a couple of weeks ago, but I just reached yesterday, and I was sent. I think David Mark was supposed to be part of the panelists with some of the chairman of APC and Labour Party and a couple of other chairmen, but for some reason he has a personal respect for me and liking. He asked that I should stand in for him, not as a member or leader of ADC, but personal, respect that I should go. So I got there. Now, when I got there and I listened to the chairman of Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, what I didn't see, let me say what I saw. What I saw was like somebody who didn't quite understand the landscape before he came. Now, this is an INEC that overpromised, that had very high civic society support, INEC that had built up reputation and had some innovations leading to 2022-23 elections. So, and the civil society fought for electoral reform, and they got what they wanted. They got a clear language on electronic transmission of election. They got a clear language that they themselves would decide the mode. And INEC went ahead and decided the mode, which is direct transmission from polling unit to the IREF, which is the INEC result viewing portal, and of course the INEC electronics storage, if you like, collection center. And this INEC inexplicably failed to do that. I went to court to say, well, what we promised that we're going to do and backed by a regulation, we are free to walk away from it. And the court somehow said, blah, 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 yes. Now, from being a new chairman in that context, the first challenge is to inspire back confidence, to give a clear declaration of integrity. Because what failed in INEC in 2023 was not technology. It wasn't logistic. It was integrity to the finishing line. The INEC chairman then, Professor Mahmoud, could have been a hero, but that means perhaps APC would have been defeated. The legislative election was transmitted. The presidential election could not, because they gave their people bad passwords that didn't fit in. And after a delay about 4-6 hours, we saw results coming from, notably River State, badly mutilated. So those results cannot validly sustain a declaration of election, even in the worst banana country. I mean, Russia does a better job with electoral integrity than what we had. North Korea clearly does a better job. So another chairman coming in this context would speak to the country reassuringly. But one of the things I heard, so what I didn't hear was that tone of, we know the problem. The problem is integrity failure. We've come with the solution. We are going to be boldly, courageously honest. He didn't say that. What I heard also was some kind of dissimulation, kind of talking about, there are many tests of, we can't get 100%. I mean, when people start by telling you, nothing is perfect, they're just being criminal or stupid. We talk about perfection. There is a clear benchmark for credible election. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. So when I just say nothing is perfect, that's not the point. We know nothing is perfect. Even our concept of perfection is imperfect. What we're saying, there are basic things that have to be done. Not rocket science. India does election, Ghana does election. So you start by saying it's not going to be perfect, but there are indicators. What are indicators? You talk about logistics. That's not the. If you look at Nigerian electoral conflicts, going to court, notice about logistics. Ballot box didn't come by 9, it came 12. People don't mind. They vote. What always matters is after voting, the integrity of the count and integrity of the result. And those are fixable. And this guy didn't, upon all the briefing he got, he came there and spoke in a very, might be timid, not reassuring. I didn't see courage. I didn't see understanding of the crisis. I didn't see the commitment to fight back against what has become an industry and a cabal of electoral malpractice. So if I was going to put hot money, bet on the outcome from what I heard from him, I concluded my mind that this guy, except the parties themselves, Nigerian citizens themselves, fight this fight. I don't see Josh Amopita with whatever credibility he may have as a scholar, as a human being. I'm not saying it's corrupt, but I'm saying I didn't see a man who hold the line against this invading army of election riggers who want to be in power. And the third world country like Nigeria, across Africa, you can see the same pattern. Desperation for power, very desperate capitulation for power, a very weak and oftentimes beaten and poor civil society. So the electoral umpire becomes just a scaffold for them to rig election.
Was it also why you said that this election was going to be worse than what we've had? And that this INEC, we can't trust this election is going to conduct?
Yes. Okay, now look at it. By this time, last election, we had clarity who are the political parties. Today, we don't have clarity which of the parties is going to stand. Apart from APC, you don't even know whether ADC did it registered, rumors, and some signals we are seeing. You can wake up and say, oh, wow, ADC shouldn't have been registered. You don't know. By this time, last electoral cycle, it was clear how the primaries will happen. Today, it's not clear to you. They talk about direct primary and consensus, but we saw the convention. Which mode was used? Was it direct primary or consensus? You can know. One, nobody said, these are the list of candidates for those elective offices. This is where they signed off, because the law says you must, each of the aspirants who are cleared will sign off a consent for consensus. Nobody said. You hear in the APC primary, where those who said they didn't give us form, we bought for excluded. So the rules are not clear. The electoral law says direct primary. It says parties must have electronic register. Nobody has verified. Parties are still struggling. In fact, the IPAC is saying, you shouldn't control us. You shouldn't directly prescribe for us how to elect them. It's against internal democracy. So at this point, there's no certainty. There's no clarity. You don't even have the time. INEC is struggling to fit everything into a very small time space, whereas INEC itself has no managerial capability to really do the things that ought to be done. And just yesterday, INEC says, you know what? All voters should line out and go and be revalidated. Isn't this speaking to you about chaos? So you come and tell us that, oh, these voters have been taken out of the voting. In fact, some people are alleging, assuming a voting strength of opposition, maybe Northern Nigeria or maybe Lagos or maybe anywhere, you go and freeze out voters. You did biometrics. The idea of biometrics is a permanent evidence of validity. Is that how you do few months to elections come in January? From February you push to January in response to Muslims, or few Muslims actually, who claim that Ramadan is not a time to vote, which doesn't make sense because in Muslim countries, in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, and every other places, they do voting. Voting is not manual level. Voting does not violate, but you consider, okay? So it's not January. Today is, so we have less than 9 months. Technically, this is the 3rd month. So this is the 4th month. So you have less than, worst case, less than 10 months for the polls. And you're asking voters to all go out with INEC that has very, very, inefficient operations. They go to revalidate to be voters. What necessitates that? Why is it necessary to do this? Again, you just sent them over to political parties. You want to come and do verification of parties again. Meanwhile, you've not even defined your rules. You just gave a draft rule for regulation you want to enact draft just a couple of days ago to the parties. You've not done consultation, probably will not do. So the point I was trying to make is this: that everything suggests to me that this will be the most bungled election. Just yesterday, he told us that ADC, the leading opposition party, has no leadership. Neither nor. Okay? And they ought to have a convention in less than a week or so. Okay? They ought to have a primary before May 30 to have, May 20 to have their presidential and other aspirants. And today they don't have any leadership. And then you have a case building in court where there's no finality, where judges are playing ping pong. So what are they looking for? Some Hercules will come and uplift all this. There are many balls in the air that 2, 3, 4, there are about 20, 30 balls on the air dangling. So you should expect that at least 5 of those 20 balls will come to the ground.
Do you see the hand of the ruling APC in all of this, trying to either pressurize INEC, or INEC is just acting a script on their own? The
reasonable thing to say is, for example, PDP, a leading opposition party. So why are they in turmoil? And I caught it. A principal officer of this government says that our party must not produce a candidate to challenge a ruling party. I mean, this is never heard of. So what logic suggests that the president's main guy, because the FCT minister is by definition the landlord, even of Mr. President. So president, the guy who oversees the president's territory, is, no matter how you look at it, a very important cabinet member. And he tells his party leader that, anyhow I got it, we will not have a candidate to challenge my principal. So PDP, after that settlement, PDP went into a terminal crisis. Today, PDP that is alive is the one that the minister controls and that says our job is no vacancy till 2031. Labour Party everything was going on, and suddenly we saw a kind of friendship between Abure, the guy who is claiming ownership or leadership, and the same minister. We saw fancy pictures, smiling faces. Then court says, throw this guy out. It took months for INEC to respond. INEC refused at the point when they grudgingly removed his name, they put his signature. But a few days ago, last week, they said there's a court order, INEC immediately enforced it. And today, the leading opposition, you are telling them that there's no leadership. So yes, it might look to say INEC is failing, but essentially, look, the tragedy of democratic elections in Africa and Nigeria primarily now is that the electoral commission is supported by a president who has all incentives to be in power. And few presidents don't push that envelope too far. We saw Joe Jonathan, perhaps his members regretting that appointed somebody who showed some kind of courage against him, maybe because the agenda aligned then, not one's power. That chairman's from the north. People say, oh, it was actually not really integrity. This is like a guy who is not going to accept this guy. But the president appoints the commission. There's a story put out by a leading professor of law in this country who says that this guy signed his letter of resignation. So if you understand African politics, an electoral umpire appointed by a president will most likely not be independent. And when that electoral umpire is dealing with a government that has shown capacity and recklessness in capturing state institutions, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the regulator of election. So what we're seeing today is that many independent analysts and who are courageous will tell you that the state capture index is high in Nigeria. The ruling party has, in my view, penetrated these institutions, and the INEC now has a responsibility to show by its conduct that it's not doing these things to favor the ruling party. For the first time in our history, we've seen competitive elections, we've seen opposition parties survive. Fail election, maybe, but survive. Buhari, just 8 years of Mr. Buhari, APC. We didn't see the opposition party go into engineered crisis of leadership that we're seeing, the kind we're seeing now. And I'll give you two instances where the minister played role, PDP. It is also in the political system where the minister of FCT tells the governor of Bauchi, I'll put fire under you. And then, like they say, oh, cry the night, and the child died in the morning. So basically, you would say that, look, this, whoever is responsible, they are engineering this electoral system to end, like I said, chaotic, terrible, and utterly rigged. I've seen nothing so far in the way the judiciary and INEC is going about their business that suggests to me that the scenario that will emerge Monday morning after the election is a scenario of credibility, trustworthiness, and calm after. No, I see chaos, I see violent disputation, I see a terrible election that might lead to, if not the collapse of democracy in Nigeria, but definitely a major dent on democracy and accountability.
How do you think we can retrace our steps? Because right now, what we've seen is that INEC has frozen out ADC as it is currently, and then also bad leadership, deleted them from their portal, banned them from attending congresses. Is INEC doing their job, or are they being weaponized to just cut off the head of the opposition? And how can we retrace these steps? Right?
My sense is that INEC has been thoroughly corrupt even before now. I mean, that's no doubt about it. INEC is a very corrupt institution. That's, if you look at every index of integrity, INEC scores very low. We've seen it in many ways. You look at even some of the cases. I mean, why would INEC conduct the election, not the delivered transmission, and then go to court and say, well, court, our defense is, we don't even bother. It's our choice not to. I mean, that's a very, it's an election that lacks credibility. What a credible election will do is to come and say, this is why we failed. And then the court will take an opinion. But you go there and says, we failed. We're not even supposed to protect our votes. We're not even supposed to trigger our most reliable mechanism for credibility of elections. So INEC is a very corrupt institution. Therefore, I think that the ruling party would easily, and probably is easily, using a corrupt organization. And I've said again, Joash Amopita does not strike me. He has no pedigree of somebody who fights the system. What INEC needs now is somebody, another electoral assembly, somebody who's independent-minded, whose appointment is independently procured, and who can stand against a clear political will to undermine democracy. And again, back to the solution. Stepping back from the precipice is first and foremost a national acknowledgement that democracy is at risk in Nigeria. This is beyond partisanship. This is not about APC. I mean, I could care less if the ruling party wins election, even though I think a ruling party that has not performed. Democracy is built on competitiveness, as Professor Skumpita said it many years ago. He said democracy is the prospect that voters will vote you out and you go home. So if you don't perform, you go home. That's what it is about. So I would like always that after a government is there 8 years, if their scorecard does not show up, so someone else should replace them. But that is incentive for people to do well. But beyond that, I couldn't care more who wins election than I care that elections are themselves competitive. So if you look at West Africa, the tragedy of democracy decline, as people say, some argue that it's not democracy that's failed, it's actually politics that's failed in West Africa. It's actually, liberal democracy. Whatever we argue, the point is that the people come to trust the votes less, the politicians come to capture institutions that determine election, and then they create fait accompli that leads to underperformance in governance and ultimately violent overthrow of government. So when Nigeria, look, we are dealing in a shadow of a reported coup. Is that not correct? So we had a story where they said there was a plan for a violent coup. Some guys are behind bars today because they are late to have. So if they can think about a coup in this condition, think about what will come when we defeat democracy as a coup. So my fear, honestly, is that I see that Nigeria's democracy is failing fundamentally. And where democracy fails is when there are no more competition. Democracy does not promise that the best guys get elected, the good guys get elected. The minimum of democracy is that at any time the people feels like they can change government. And when that change is no longer possible, because those in power have bought over, captured, right word, the institutions that determine that process of voter selection of a different actors. When it's foreclosed, then they have also foreclosed the prospect of basic freedom and human rights, because essentially the basic rights include the rights to make the choice to vote or not to vote, to express choice between alternatives. So what we are working into is where there's actually no alternative, and that's where INEC's role and the court's role are in focus. If INEC's shenanigans are not their cut and paste, decision making results in destroying ADC, destroying Labour Party, destroying PDP, and on Monday morning or Sunday evening, we are left with only President Tinubu and the APC as the only viable party today. They have taken over the National Assembly, largely. That's about 30 governors have, many governors have. And what is driving this defection? It's not anything. There's no magic. APC doesn't have a magic formula in managing the parties are better managed. All the parties are shambolic. But what is driving it is the person think there's no way out, that there or not you die. If we stay out, the rig us out. The courts are foreclosed. Go to court. The courts have since 2020, since before then, court has now a history of distrust. If you look at the Afrobarometer, the courts at INEC have about 75% to 80% distrust. That means 75 to 80% citizens say, we don't trust the judiciary. If you do that today, a new poll, you will discover that about 90% of Nigerians or more have no confidence in the judiciary, especially in election cases, with very clear evidence of corruption, report anecdotes of participants on how they bribe judges and all that. And of course, you don't have to go far. A Nigerian senator, a senior senator, openly said he arranged electoral victories elections for his colleagues through his wife. This is an open admission. So nobody can accuse you of scandalizing the judiciary if the actor says, I did it with my wife, who is the president of the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal has been a center of corruption in election cases. That presidency, that whoever occupied that office needs to have a moral profiling and look at their history, because that also comprises cases. So we are getting to a point where the system is being rigged to create a sense of fait accompli. And when that happens, Nigeria is a very poor, volatile society. So imagine what sections of the country not in power would think about. So just imagine some people in the north say, oh, we are feeling cheated. And maybe they are fancying that at the poll, at the election, they could win. Some people in the southeast might say, oh, it's our turn. And they're fancying that maybe if we project a candidate who is popular, and they work together, they win. Now, if those are foreclosed because elections are already rigged before you even start the process, what will they do? They will resort to violence. The violence is really attractive process we are facing now. And that's why some of us are worried, not because of partisanship. We are worried that we are about losing our democracy because we are allowing politicians use their desperation for power, use the power calculus to overshadow other calculus. We need to think about development calculus. We need to think about stability, how this country can be stable and rescued. And all this will require in the minimum that if you're going to follow democracy trajectory, if you're going to be a democracy, the minimum you require is a competitive election. And this is why some people say maybe dictatorships outperform democracy. So, China, the secret is very simple. If you're not a true democracy, you can't attain development. If you are a well-managed dictatorship, you can attain development. So if you put in a formula, you can say bad democracy is less than dictatorship. Good democracy better than dictatorship. So if you look at the world, the map of development in the world, the countries have made it to the Scandinavians, much of Europe, we are the fundamentals of democracy are in practice. They get development. If you look at the other map, those who have made it, who may not be that democratic, maybe China, maybe South Korea under Lee Kuan Yew, under Deng Pak. Now South Korea is a good democracy. Maybe Japan under the generals in 1925, 1935, when they started their miracle. Singapore, maybe under Lee Kuan Yew. What is common? That is well-run developmental states that had rule of law, but probably didn't have votes and there was no pretension. If you look at countries that are at the bottom of development ladder, there are countries that put a formality of democracy, but are neither democracies nor organized authoritarian governments. They are the worst in development index. So that's why today Nigeria is classified as electoral autocracy. So you're not even a democracy. And so my argument is that beyond the fact that the elections will be rigged in 2027, or seem to be being rigged, there's also a chaos element, mismanaged, ungoverned. INEC has not shown the rules, the electoral act, the time frame, everything points to massive failure. So together with the fact that the votes will be rigged, the fake results will be announced because the legislators work very hard to ensure that there's no real time, everything they did will make sure they create that possibility that somebody can cook the results and get it through the judicial process and say, oh, well, the law says it doesn't have to be. I mean, this is just what they set up to. But that apart, we're not faced with the difference that you might end up with, even don't know who are the parties to vote for, who are the candidates. One legal scholar says, by getting back to Abacha's 5 leprous finger, you don't even have a candidate apart from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
All right, River State seems to have become the laboratory of political destruction in Nigeria. The FCT minister created the governor, Sim Fubara, and then we saw how all the fights, and then I tried to destroy him. The Supreme Court intervened. Then federal might was deployed. For you, is what happened in Rivers the same template that President Tinubu intends to use against any governor that tries to step out of line?
I don't know what I use separately, but what I'd say is that there is obvious coercion, but there also some degree of cowardice. I see, governors themselves, maybe because they're not confident of themselves, maybe because they're not confident of the electoral system. I think more so because of that, and they're not confident of the courts, that they are jittery, even when there's no cause to be jittery. Some of the ways governors try to appease Tinubu, even those governors who are still standing, some of them, their body language approach is too supine and condescending, that I know the fear of INEC and the fear of the court is the beginning of wisdom in Nigerian politics.
Well, let's wrap up this way. You said Nigeria will have the worst democracy in 2027 than we have today. That's the sentence of this republic. With this seeming reality, what's your advice to Nigerians going into 2027 elections?
To first realize that the signs are not good. To also understand that apart from God, everything is created. These are predictions based on scenario. If they change the scenario, if they change the game, they get different outcomes. So if Nigerians start getting more concerned about democracy surviving in Nigeria, but less about the party, who wins. If Nigerians start thinking more around how do we ensure competitive, free, fair election and push on INEC, then I might be wrong. I would like to be proved false, to be a false prophet, so that in 2027 we have a better democracy. INEC conducts a less chaotic, less rigged, more transparent, more credible election. But from what I'm seeing, if we continue this trend, the result is guaranteed.